morning shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight with your award-winning host, Dale Davidson. Dale interviews fascinating guests from top-ranked celebrities to people just like you who have an important story to tell. For more than 15 years, Dale is broadcast every week from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. He finds the people who really make Las Vegas a one-of-a-kind city and lets the world know just what's happening in this remarkable town. You'll discover why 50 million people visit the entertainment capital of the world every year. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of Las Vegas Tonight.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. Thank you so much for tuning in. Believe me, you're going to be as glad as I am because we have a legendary guest. Endy is with us. He's from a legendary gaming family here in Las Vegas, and he has seen it all. Thanks for coming on, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it very much. So we decided by doing the math during the before we rolled tape, you've been here since you were 8.
I have, yes.
You know, you're practically a native, and I'll say the same thing I say to natives. So you're the one. So when you first came, there weren't that many people here, relatively speaking, huh?
No, and I wasn't real happy about coming here.
Yeah.
It was my father who had decided, it's all in my book, that he wanted to leave Los Angeles and the company, his father's company actually, who he sold out to somebody, and my dad decided to move to Las Vegas and said, he convinced us saying, you know, it's so hot there, they swim laps in the swimming pool. You don't have to run track. And we were all excited about it. Come to find out, they don't do that. But he promised us a swimming pool instead. So.
Yeah, and he delivered.
Yeah, he delivered. He
That's
always
good.
did.
So what was different? First of all, let me show everybody the book. Paul S. Endy Jr., Las Vegas Casino Gaming Legend. And Paul was your dad, and the name of his company was Paulson Gaming, wasn't it?
Yeah, Paulson Dice and Card was the original name.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, my main impetus for writing the book was really to solidify his name in history, because everybody, including Donald Trump and other celebrities, always called him Mr. Paulson.
Yeah.
And he was not Mr. Paulson. He was Paul Endy.
Right.
He named the company Paulson after his father because he was Paul's son. His father, my grandfather, the legendary Paul Endy Sr., who first started the only gaming chip in the world, was Paul Endy Sr.
Yes.
So that's where the name Paulson came from, not because his kids worked in the business with him, but he played it like a tribute to his father.
Oh, that's nice. And now you're following up and doing the same thing for him.
I am.
Tell me what it was like to grow up in that family, which really was gaming royalty. You know, it really truly was, wasn't it?
It was. I started in the business later. I had 2 brothers who both worked for my father at early ages, right out of college and high school.
Right.
I chose to go in the gaming industry much later when my father invited me or asked me to come to work for him after my middle brother had passed away.
Yes.
And I couldn't, turn him down. But it was very quickly that I learned and got an opportunity to go around and meet the various casino owners, Wayne Newton. The sheriff was a very good friend of my father's, Ralph Lambs. They were buddies.
Yeah.
And my dad, cool enough, was the only and first person, maybe the only person he was at that time, to be allowed to join the Las Vegas Country Club, because it was known, with all due respect, to be a primarily Jewish club.
Right.
I mean,
I read that in your book.
But Kirk Kerkorian really took a liking to my father who built the International Hotel, which became the Las Vegas Hilton, and now is the Westgate.
And the MGM Grand.
And the MGM Grand. He really took a liking to my father and said, come on, Paul, you got to join the Las Vegas Country Club. And my dad was invited to join. And,
wow.
It's a real tribute to him.
That is.
So I was pretty young at that time, so Kirk Corning didn't mean a lot to me. You know, I knew Trans World Airlines and some of his other holdings, but I was really impressed later in life, especially now that I've written the book, to have met these really wonderful people that started the gaming industry in Nevada.
Yes.
People like the Domainis and the Housels and the Engelstads, and reintroducing myself to what I call the old timers that were the original movers and shakers in Las Vegas has been really, really eye-opening.
Yes, and you were here during the mob era, really, when they were involved often secretly in ownership of casinos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. What was that like?
You know, my father never, and I think he did it to protect us, never really discussed a lot of the mob situation, but I know some of his friends were, you know, had mob connections, his friends at the Sands Hotel, his friends at the Dunes Hotel, and especially the Stardust. He kind of protected us from that. I think the closest story I ever got is when he was delivering chips to the Calneva up in Lake Tahoe.
Oh, sure.
When he ran into, you know, John F. Kennedy was there at one point, and so was Marilyn.
Sinatra owned it for a while.
Sinatra had an ownership, and then Marilyn Monroe was there, and he got to go under these tunnels that were under the Calneva that, you know, various people use. He kind of told us that story, but never really talked a lot about the mob. He was more kind of infatuated, I want to say, with Howard Hughes. Yeah. Because it was Howard Hughes who came in. And
he really changed this town, didn't he? And you have a long section about it that's really fascinating. Talk about Howard Hughes and how much he meant and his legacy still means to Las Vegas.
Well, I think what Howard Hughes did that I think we all, if we had had the opportunity, could have done was bought land and you know, just bought properties. I like the story. My favorite story is Howard Hughes checks into the Desert Inn, and he doesn't want to leave. He says, "I'm staying here," and they say, "Well,"
and he had like the whole floor, right?
The whole floor was his, and they said, "Well, Mr. Hughes, you can't stay here unless you buy the place. How much is it for sale?" And he turns around and buys the Desert Inn, and then he wants to know how many more of these tax deals are there. So then he buys the Sahara, and he buys Harold's Club in Reno, and he buys, you know, all the land where Summerlin is now.
Oh, I know. Acres and acres of land.
I think my father, looking back, one of the things he didn't do, and I wish he would have, is, although he didn't have money at the time, when he moved here from Los Angeles, he borrowed $3,000 from his father and bought a bankrupt dice company. And he lived in a little trailer behind he called it Lucky 2121 Industrial Road. He lived in a trailer, and he took a shower with a hose every night. I mean, we had no real money. You know, we lived a decent life in Monterey Park, California. But as he grew the business, he knew that he had to manufacture the equipment during the day, and then every night he would be out talking to all these people and selling. That's when the casino bosses worked during those days. They worked at night because that's when the high rollers were there and the gamblers were there. So he would go out and solicit customers' business at night and then manufacture them during the day. So I didn't see a lot of my father during our Las Vegas years at the beginning, but he was a very important part of my life, our life. Absolutely was.
And you obviously loved him and respected him, and that's why you're doing the tour now, you know? Absolutely. Just mostly to talk about him.
And again, it's mostly because too many people in the industry kept saying Paulson, Paulson, Paulson. They didn't know who Paul Endy was. I got him inducted into the Gaming Hall of Fame in the early 80s with Donald Carano, who started the El Dorado, which now owns Caesars and all of that, and the Caranos. I got him inducted into the Gaming Hall of Fame. I think until I did that, people really didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Because
of the name.
We go back to Howard Hughes. Las Vegas became very corporate. The Suma Corporation acquired 6, 7 casinos, and you kind of lost more of the connection with people than you did just ordering, chips and dice and playing cards.
Oh, I understand. It really was a personal business then, wasn't it? And the owners, from the owners down, they knew who the whales were. The big spenders, the big guys in town.
And keep in mind, we made gambling chips. We're making money. So we had to have the trust of not only the casino manager, the security people, the camera people, the cage people. My dad developed a real trust with them that they knew if they got chips from Paulson with standardized colors, who my father was the first company to do that, they knew that the chips were legitimate and that they were protected. Before my father started making gaming chips, other chip companies would make whatever colored chips the casinos wanted. Let's say, for example, the Horseshoe had a $100 black chip. Well, another company would make a $25 black chip. Well, they'd end up paying off these people in $100 when it was supposed to only be a $25 chip. So my father said, no. He legitimized gaming and said, no, all $100 chips are black.
And what were the other denominations of
red
colors?
for $5, green $25. Dollars were usually silver dollars at that time, or white. $1,000 were yellow. $500 were purple. My father would not make any other color chip for a customer, even though we were asked to do that on many, many occasions.
But you made commemorative chips.
We did.
Tell me about that business, and was that profitable itself?
Very profitable for the casinos, okay? For us, they were small value numbers. For example, the Mike Tyson chips. Everybody remembers Mike Tyson, I think, fighting with Evander Holyfield when Mike Tyson bit his ear. So we would deliver Mike Tyson chips to the MGM for every fight. They were $25 and $100 chips. So if you can imagine, every time the chip collectors especially came to buy those chips for $100 and walk out the door, if the casino paid us $1,
and they made 99 bucks.
They're making $99 on every chip they walked out the doors. My dad called the casinos are really the banks. But we do Frank Sinatra chips every year for his birthday at Foxwoods. We've done Tony Bennett chips. We've done Jimi Hendrix. We've done all of the rock and roll groups, Ozzy Osbourne, Red Hot Chili Peppers. The collectible market, which I'll be speaking at the National Collectors Convention in July at the South Point. I'm their VIP speaker. I'm very privileged to have been invited. Are very active, and I just saw on Facebook that I've already seen the new Horseshoe chips at Bally's.
Have you?
They were just put on the table on Friday night. So now
Horseshoe's rebranding. Bally's is branding itself as the
Tropicana. We'll see what happens over there.
Around we go.
But you can see where these chip collectors have already found out we got to get those Horseshoe chips. They've just come out, so they're all over town buying the new Horseshoe chips. We have a chip in my book that we made for the Mermaid Casino in downtown Las Vegas in 1987, I think, that just sold the $5 chip for $25,000.
One
chip. So
the collectors are serious about this.
Collectors are serious. Unfortunately, gaming has been a little more restrictive on commemoratives now. It
really?
used to be, everybody came out. Barbra Streisand, Tom Jones, everybody had a commemorative chip. But the Gaming Commission has kind of said, that's a lot of changing of denominations, and they kind of want to slow it down. So it's not as prevalent as it used to be.
Okay.
But I still see they're out there. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Eric, we need to take a brief break. We're going to come back, and I just want to continue learning about Vegas from you because you are a historian. You're the right guy to go to, and we want to talk about your movie. So he is such an expert, they're making a movie about him. So that's pretty good stuff. We'll be back with Eric Endy right after this. Hi, I'm Dale Davidson, host of Las Vegas Tonight. Radio has an enduring place in the heart of America. Sometimes it's music that can enliven your spirit or keep you company when you need some. More often for me, it's just been the right spoken word or two that can quiet my mind and soul. Radio brings me a reassuring word in the quiet of night or a welcoming voice early in the morning as I shake off the night's sleep and find my way into God's purpose for my day. And always, I find the best radio station is the one that brings me the best news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. My favorite radio station is KKVV in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's still right where it's been for years at 1060 on the AM dial, hovering over Sin City like a gospel airship, broadcasting the good news of the abounding love that Jesus Christ has for every single one of us. No matter who you are or where you live, you can receive God's Word via the KKVV Gospel Airship. Just go to kkvv.com and click on Listen Live. KKVV is using all the tools that God's provided them, like podcasting and video streaming and video on demand, to produce programs that lift up our fellow believers and save the lost. If you feel a calling to speak to others about Jesus Christ on your very own show, pick up the phone and call the station. They'll be happy to tell you how. Call KKVV today at 702-731-5588 or drop them an email at kkvvradio@hotmail.com. Please join me in becoming part of the KKVV family. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. We have a fascinating guest, and if you didn't watch the first segment, shame on you. Rewind this thing and watch the first segment, because segment 2 came right out of segment 1, or is about to. Thanks for coming on again, Eric.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. You said something fascinating right before we rolled here. You tell your story in this book and the story of Las Vegas through the chips, in a way. Tell me what you said a second ago.
Yeah, what I wanted to do with this book is not only pay tribute to my father, but there wasn't a book that I could see about Las Vegas that really tracked the history of Las Vegas from its very beginning in 1931,
right,
when it was Sin City.
Yeah,
one
gaming
casino,
was legalized.
Gaming was just legalized,
right,
all the way to when the governor, to when half of the Strip was shut down in 1963 when President Kennedy was assassinated,
right,
and then the full Strip gets shut down by our governor during COVID.
Right.
And then we have Mr. Las Vegas, who I really respect, Wayne Newton, who opens up the Strip saying, "Come on back and let's wear a mask." All I could envision was my father saying, "Don't you dare let those people in the casino with a mask. They're robbers. Robbers wear masks."
Yeah.
So,
that's funny.
So what I did in the book is I broke it up into the segments from Sin City to family destination to now luxury accommodations, or, this is like the place for the new hip youngsters. And I showed the book to UNLV. I went to the UNLV Foundation and talked to them. I was invited to go. And they were so impressed with the book that they're going to either offer it to their gaming school, in the library, and then offer it to the students. Because my book tells not only the history of Las Vegas and about Paul Endy, who was involved in all of these
Making
aspects,
everything happen.
with the sheriff, with the mayor, with Wayne Newton. You know, it was just a small town at that time. But I told it through the gaming chips we manufacture. As being the manufacturer of 99% of the casinos in the world that use Paulson chips, it was easy for me to take one of the first casinos ever built on the Strip, other than the El Rancho, was a Hacienda. So I have it imploded and Red Foxes on it, who was one of very controversial black comedian that my dad would never let me go see at the Hacienda. So that gets imploded, and up comes Mandalay Bay with Michael Jackson 1 chips that we made.
Oh, okay.
Same as the Aladdin Hotel that was once owned by Wayne Newton as a partner, and it gets imploded, and up comes Planet Hollywood with Britney Spears' grand opening chips on it. So what I tried to do was, and it was difficult getting a publisher to take my 200 plus color photos of chips, because I didn't want to put a chip in there, a Britney Spears, a Michael Jackson, a Super Bowl chip at the Tropicana that was black and white. So I finally found a publisher that said, okay, we'll do it. I was this close to Penguin, and they said, we love your story, we love Vegas, you know, I think we can come up with the money to pay you. And I said, oh, wow. And they said, how many books have you written? And I said, well, this is my first book. I've written dissertations, and I have an MBA, and I have a master's degree in audiology. I've written a lot of papers. Well, Mr. Endy, you've only written one book. I'm sorry, we can't take you. You'll have to self-publish.
Wow.
So I went the self-publish route.
I did that too with my book.
And it's much more difficult to market.
Yes, it is.
Although I feel I have an interesting market because there's so many chip collectors around, as we discussed earlier. And casino gift shops. And now we have hired producers to make a mini series about our book.
Oh, is it a documentary? Is that what they're doing?
It's not going to be a documentary. The idea of this is really a mini series, kind of a Netflix, a Prime series that shows more of Paul Endy's intervening into Las Vegas, and how he changes it, and how he changes, you know, the perception of the gaming chips, and his effect, and Las Vegas's effect on our family.
There were a couple of instances in your book that really stand out for me as far as what was your dad like. And one of them was getting the sheriff to oversee you getting the money you were owed.
From Bob Stupak
From Bob
Vegas
Stupak.
World.
I wanted you to say it, not me. But tell that story. That is a great story.
You know, my dad was very fortunate to have some very good friends in Las Vegas. And one of his best friends was Sheriff Ralph Lamb.
Yes. So he's legendary. I mean, I wasn't here then, but he's legendary as the sheriff.
He really made an impact on the town. He helped me. I remember it was probably my second week on the job working for my dad, and Bob Stupak was opening the Vegas World, which is now the Strat. It used to be the Stratosphere. I guess it's short for the Strat now. Bob Stupak is alerted that I'm on my way with the chips and to have a check or cash ready for me. So I get to the hotel and I knock on the door, and you know, nobody's there, and I finally get security, and I say, I've got these chips, and I bring them in to deliver them, and I'm ready to deliver them, and Bob Stupak comes down, and I say, Mr. Stupak, I need a check or cash. And he says, why do you need that? And I said, well, Mr. Stupak, we called you ahead of time and told you. And he says, doesn't your father know I'm on an open account? I have great credit. I said, listen, Mr. Stupak, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and that is collect a check from you. Anyway, he said, I'm not going to give you a check. I'm going to your office. You guys are right around the corner from us. I'll follow you there. So he drives his Rolls Royce and follows me in my little pickup
Can't
truck.
give you the $5,000, but he's got a Rolls.
Yep. So we get back to the office, and as we walk in my dad's office, Ralph Lamb is there, and so is my father. And Mr. Stupak, being the animated guy he was, starts pounding on my dad's desk, demanding why he wanted money. And my dad, every time he pounded on the desk, my dad's face got redder and redder and angrier and angrier. And finally, my father said, you have no credit, Mr. Stupak. I need your check or your cash. Bob Stupak reaches into his pocket and pulls out his keys to the Rolls Royce and throws them on my dad's desk. And my father looked at Bob Stupak and said, Mr. Stupak, let me tell you something. I know your Rolls Royce is leased from Valley Bank. You don't own it. I don't want a mortgage Rolls Royce. You either pay us for the chips or you're not opening in a couple days. And he says, okay. And my father asked the sheriff to follow me back to Vegas World and assist me in collecting the money from Bob Stupak.
And that's old Vegas at its finest, isn't it?
It's old Vegas.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Talk about your dad and the fire at the then MGM Grand, now Bally's.
Sure.
You know, that says an awful lot about him and the way he delivers for his customers.
Yeah, he was insistent on taking care of his customer. And I'll never forget Maury Jagger was in charge of the MGM, which is where Bally's is now,
right.
soon to be the Horseshoe.
Right.
And Maury Jagger tells my father that he's out of dice, and he wants my father to deliver him like right then. Well, my dad calls me and says, Eric, I'm going to the MGM to deliver dice. You need to go with me. I said, Dad, they're on fire. People are jumping off the roof. You can't be delivering dice. He says, you want to bet? You going with me or I'll go by myself? Okay, I'll going with you. So he was bound and determined. He got the okay from Michael Gahn to park at the Barbary Coast, which was right across the street from the MGM.
Yeah, sure.
We ran across
the Cromwell now. Yeah, right.
Ran across the street. Security is mad at us. They're screaming. People are, jumping off the roof.
Unbelievable.
And my father is determined. We run up to the front doors, and security and fire department is telling us to leave. He says, I'm not leaving. Make sure that Maury Jagger gets these dice. And the security guard said, I will, but I hate to tell you, we're on fire and nobody's in the dice table. So he gave him the dice, and he assured my dad that he would get them, and we left. And we were lucky to get out of there before we got engulfed.
That's incredible.
A good friend of mine, Lark Williams.
Oh, yeah.
She's a disc jockey on 97.1 point. She was working in the Keno Lounge during that fire.
Really?
So we kind of exchanged some stories about the MGM.
That was a turning point in Las Vegas.
It was.
Changed fire codes and all kinds of other things for the good and for the better,
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Mexico and Paul Son's connection there. Early on, your dad decided to start a maquiladora down there, and which we'll explain what that is and why you did it.
Well, this was another beginning fit of my dad's temper, to be honest with you, because we were manufacturing dice and chips on Industrial Road, and OSHA came in the office one day and said, listen, Mr. Endy, that material that you make dice out of, that's called cellulose nitrate. My dad goes, of course it is. He goes, do you realize how flammable that is? He said, you have fire extinguishers here, but it's not enough. You're going to have to double the number of extinguishers. You're going to have to do this and do that. My dad was so angry because he believed that this building that he'd spent so much money on fire coating was sufficient.
Right.
He kicks the trash can down the hallway out of a fit of anger and says, that's it, we're moving to Mexico.
Wow.
So He packed up the dice shop in the following weekend, moved half of it to a hotel in San Luis, Mexico,
Right.
and began manufacturing dice and had the entire dice shop moved within just a couple weeks.
That's incredible.
So he moved, that was the beginning of the operation.
yeah.
Longer story is that we were having a very difficult time hiring people because of the benefits that the hotels paid at that time.
Yeah.
We mostly employed, thankfully, armed forces spouses,
Right.
partners. They would work in our factory because they were, part-time at Nellis Air Force Base, and we were very fortunate that we had that workforce. But at that time, there was very little labor around to manufacture, especially gaming chips and dice,
Well, it's very fine tolerances, and it's very scientific.
and very labor intensive.
Yeah.
And my dad loved Mexico and loved the people there and loved, of course, the wages, but he more loved the honesty and how hard the Mexican people were willing to work and not complain. They worked in better conditions at our factory than what they lived in.
That's that's amazing.
We eventually grew the Mexico manufacturing plant to over 500 employees
Wow.
from just a handful at the beginning.
And then you started with dice, but then you started making chips down there too.
Started making chips.
And you said in your book that the security was so good down there in terms of the cameras and the security guards and that sort of thing that it really guaranteed the integrity of the chips.
Did, because remember, one of the reasons is because in a maquiladora, everything you bring into that country has got to go back out.
Yeah.
So they counted, they wanted a count of every chip across that border.
Right.
So it gave my dad extra security protection, knowing that he had to account for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the security was real top notch.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
See, that's really important. What people need to understand, which I didn't understand fully until I read your book, is this was money. This was equal to money. And at the time, you could go anywhere in town and pay for something with a chip. Couldn't you?
You
could go buy a meal at a different casino.
Right.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, man, it was.
And I heard an interesting story, and I one of the questions I wanted to ask you was this. Tell me whether it's true. But the Catholic Church on Las Vegas Boulevard would accept chips as contributions in the basket that went around, and then they said that one of the monks at the cathedral would then go and redeem them all.
I've heard that.
Have you? And his nickname was the Chipmunk.
Yeah.
Is this true?
I've heard that. I've heard that because these chips started just showing up all over the place from this one individual.
Yeah.
They didn't know at the beginning who it was. Why would you be going to the Sahara and then to the desert? And you either take all the chips to one place or another, but not a few here and a few there.
Isn't it fun? It's a great story.
It is.
Another one that you need to write even more. You need to write another book, another follow-up for this kind of stuff. We need to take another brief break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this man singing, which is substantial. Maybe we can talk him into a little a cappella. We'll see. We'll be back with Eric Endy right after this.
Our world isn't perfect. Just watch the news. Evil is everywhere. Now, at the core of who we are, we all know and feel these things to be wrong. But why? Why do we agree that some actions are wrong? Where did we get our standard, the moral code that tells us good from bad? If we're creating it ourselves, free to choose what works for us, then that would make every action acceptable. Good and bad would be the same. Then people who commit heinous crimes wouldn't be guilty. They'd simply be doing what's right for them. And yet we say they're guilty. When someone murders an innocent person, it bothers us, enrages us. We hate injustice. Now, maybe we're in a game of survival of the fittest. Suffering and death simply weed out those who aren't strong enough or lucky enough to have won the genetic lottery. But if that's true, why do stories of death and destruction draw up feelings of deep disgust and hurt inside you? Why does your heart break at the news of tragedy? And why do so many other people feel the same way? Could it be that there's something more? Some greater outside force that has ingrained you with the desire for love and goodness? Suppose there's a reason behind hating the evil in the world. Suppose it leads to something greater. Could it lead to hope?
Welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. Eric Endy is my very special guest. He's been regaling us, that's the right word, regaling us with great Las Vegas stories. Thanks again for coming on. It's really been a lot of fun. I want to talk about you a little bit. You're quite the singer. You're in a men's chorus, and you've kindly invited my wife and I to come and see on Sunday at Artemis Ham Hall at UNLV, your men's choir. Tell me about the beginnings. When did you decide you wanted to be a singer? Because you followed through and you really did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a music scholarship in college, a singing scholarship.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was in a very aggressive singing, dancing, performing group called Time at Valley High School, and then transferred to Western High School to continue to be with the same director, whose wife was from Juilliard and he was from a music school, and they put together this amazing group of singers with an orchestra and a band and a light show.
Wow.
We didn't do like we do today, stand up, sing, everybody sings as a choir and sit down. We were dancing behind microphones, we had outfits, we had costumes.
Wow, this is awesome.
We performed with Wayne Newton, we performed on the Strip, we performed at various conventions throughout Las Vegas, raising money for the school.
Yeah,
and won #1 at the International Jazz Festival in Reno, Nevada.
That's not nothing.
And beat
That's
a school
something.
from England.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow.
So I went on and enjoyed singing. I was at the University of Utah for 2 years and got disenchanted with their music program, then transferred to Reno. But the interesting story, I think, and I talk about in my book, is kind of how I got there.
Yeah.
And that is Mr. Jim Garufas, wonderful man. He's 82 years old, lives in Las Vegas today, performed all over Las Vegas as the Jim Garris Trio.
Right.
He performed at our wedding. Anyway, he was my music director at Valley High School. And I was in the music room one day when the principal, his name was Marshall Darnell, I'll never forget him, comes into the room and asks my music director why there's so much trash in his trash barrel. And my music director looks at him and says, "Mr. Darnell, that's not my job, that's a custodian." He says, "Well, it's your job now. You're going to be emptying your trash in your room and the rest of the music development." And Garuf says, "That's not fair." And he says, "I don't care whether you think it's fair or not," and walks out of the room. I was just horrified.
Right.
And Mr. Garufas then decides to leave Valley High School and start a new group called Jubilation at Western. Well, I told my dad about this story, and my dad was hot as could be. And I said, I'm going to Western. But he really got mad when he found out, and I told him that Marshall Darnell had blocked my ability to transfer to Western High School, because he was claiming I was like the quarterback of the football team who can't play for a school. And Marshall Darnell said I was being prostulated by Mr. Groofus.
I don't even know what that word is.
I didn't either, but my dad didn't like it. And he said, you set up a meeting with that Marshall Darnell, and I'll take care of it. And I said, oh my God. So I set up the meeting, and I'm pacing back and forth. My dad comes in. We go into Marshall's office, and my dad grabs Darnell's tie and starts squeezing it. And Marshall's face starts turning red, and my dad says, so you called my son a prostitute, or being prostituted, or what did you call him? What did you say? Prostulate? What does that mean? And Darnell says, I know he's being convinced to go. And my dad says, he wants to go. You tell me right now, and you scream it out that he can go, or you're not going anywhere again. He continues to squeeze it. The last thing I remember is Marshall's down on the floor.
Yeah.
My dad's foot is on top of him, and he yells out to his secretary to let Eric Endy go to Western High School. And that's how I continued at Western. We won first place at the International Jazz Festival 2 years in a row.
That's a great, great story.
It was
That's
really
a wonderful
great.
story.
The sad part is I couldn't understand the jealousy or I felt empathetic for Marshall Darnell, why he would treat him that way.
Yeah.
But what was amazing is that our group was bringing in so much money to the school, more than Marshall Darnell finally admitted. He got a lot of pressure from high school sports, that the music department was overshadowing them. We were bringing in so much more money than them. General Motors convention would write a check for $5,000. Ford was $10,000. We had so much money that we were self-funded.
Yes.
And for some reason, Marshall Darnell had a problem with that.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. That's the Peter principle all over again. In this case, a principal's case.
Again, it shows the love my father had to allow me to go where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And he would do whatever it took to make that happen.
Yeah, clearly.
Absolutely.
Old Vegas. I love these stories. Let me ask you a little bit about your faith, because I know you're a man of God. And we have a program that airs in Christian television stations all over the country. Tell us about your understanding of coming to a realization that God is real.
Well, I've always been one to honor God in my way. It first started out is with my mother. Took us to Catholic school, in my early days. Went to Sunday catechism. But what hit me the most was I was only about 5 years old, and I went to a funeral. And the funeral I went to was our babysitter. Very seldom did my parents ever go out, but they did once in a while, and we had a babysitter. Her name was Carrie Martinez. So her husband had passed away from a lead poisoning from a pencil that had got shoved into his leg. He had fallen in, I think it was at the library. He had fallen, this pencil punctures his leg, and went to the hospital and passed away.
What?
They found him dead.
Wow.
They put him in the coffin. And the funeral was as I recall, a couple days later. So we go to the funeral, and to protect us from being in the funeral parlor, I remember my mom had to stay out in the lobby. All I remember is there was a bunch of screaming and yelling. Well, Carrie's husband, Manuel, got up out of the coffin.
Oh, my Lord.
And was alive.
Wow.
So in those days, that was 56, 57? I guess there wasn't a lot of embalming done. And the families could choose whether they wanted embalmed or put in ice. So he was covered in ice. Well, somehow he wasn't dead. He came back to life. And I didn't really believe it. I didn't know what was going on. Everybody was screaming. My mom was crying and all of that. And all I remember is him walking out and them, assisting him out, taking him to the hospital. And he had said that he had seen this. He didn't describe it as God, I would say. He described it as a very calming white light was talking to him, saying it wasn't his time or something like that. And then all of a sudden he looked out and he saw everybody sitting and watching him, and then he was back in his body.
Wow.
He lived for, I guess, another year or two after that and died of natural causes.
That's phenomenal.
But that's the first time I've ever seen a person, get up
out of a casket.
That
I've never seen
was
that.
in a casket. I didn't see him in the casket, but everybody else did. But I saw him come out of the mortuary.
That sort of story has a certain commonality to most that you hear about the light and coming to the light, and that feeling that it's not your time yet, and the voice has got to be God, And
I don't. Who else could it be?
Yeah. What else could it be?
Exactly.
But your Creator. So that's a very real example of faith in action.
It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the billboards around town that says, "You will meet God when you die." So,
yeah, those billboards, it's very interesting. I'm going to have him on my show. His name's John Peters. He lives in Montana, used to be in Las Vegas. He pays for those billboards out of his pocket.
Wow.
And he's got 15 at a time rotating around the city. And just because his faith is that strong, and he believes that other people need to know that.
Has he had any kind of out-of-body experience or been aware of anybody like
My
that?
guess is he has, but I never asked him. So I'm going to have him on my show, and ask him what convinced him so solidly to do this, so much so that he travels from state to state and gives away banners and signs and things like that to put up all over the country, just because he's that strong a believer in it, and he's got some wealth, so that's how he's spending it, which is very interesting. Yeah, let's talk about you in the future. Going to be in Vegas the rest of your life?
Yeah, I love it here. I've lived in the cold climate of Reno in the snow, and I would rather take the summer. Las Vegas has, we can be at the mountains within 30 minutes. We can be at Lake Mead within 30 minutes. It still has its smaller town, atmosphere. You talk to people, and you get the respect. This is our town.
And you've raised a family here. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I'm very proud of my wife, Xiaoqin, Kathy, Endy, and we have 2 sons and a daughter. My oldest son is in private equity in Los Angeles. My middle son, Nevin, is a broker and financial expert in Las Vegas, and my daughter, kind of following my footsteps a little, she works for the Boyd Group in human resources and the human side of the casino.
That's nice. That's nice. That somebody else is carrying on the legacy. You still run the company?
No, I don't. Long story short, in 1995. 96, I reverse merged it with a French company who had a patent in the RFID. RFID now, as we all know, is used to track people into all kinds of things. We put it in the chips. And I felt the right combination after my dad had passed away, so I did a reverse merger with them. Helped them with the company as a publicly traded company, because I took the company public earlier. We sold the company to a Japanese company called Angel right before the COVID hit in 2021.
Oh, you did? So
right
recently.
Before. Yeah.
Recently.
And it's kind of cool. Their name is Angel. So one of the things I say in the back of my book is for my dad not to worry that we're in good hands with an angel.
There you go. I like it. I like it. And you've been an angel of a guest.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Eric Endy, ladies and gentlemen, a great guy. His book, once again, Paul S. Endy Jr., Las Vegas Casino Legend. And we hope the movie does well.
Thank you.
And we wish you the very best. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me.
What a great guest. Eric Endy. We'll have you on again when the movie's done.
Or miniseries.
Or miniseries, whatever it is. Whatever it turns out to be. And as I try to remember to say each and every episode of Las Vegas Tonight, two things. First, please feel free to support us financially. And you can do that by going to our website, which is www.vegassaints.org. And the second thing is, when it comes to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, please walk with him. God bless you.
The birds sing their glory in a sweet lullaby as the trees reach up to touch the sun. The wind shapes the clouds that are rolling by as the world gives way to a life begun. The seasons change and life is what it brings, showing beauty that surrounds us all and gives us a reason and a song to sing. When we listen with our hearts, we'll hear the call. This is heaven on earth. Heaven on earth. When we see our true worth, then we'll realize this is heaven on earth. The children of tomorrow are calling our name, and with the angels lift their voice to speak, saying we're God's children, we are all the same. Open your eyes and you will see this is heaven on earth. Heaven on earth. When we see our true worth, then we'll realize this is heaven. This is heaven on
What is the Bible? What does it say? Why do people care about it? And what does it have to do with you? Christians claim the Bible was authored by God, through human hands to share his story and help us understand who he is. It's a diverse collection of literature, including historical accounts, poetry, stories, and wisdom. It contains mind-blowing adventures like men being thrown into a fire-filled furnace, yet they weren't burned. It speaks of an old man who was lowered into a lion's den, only to be supernaturally protected and not eaten. It also tells the story of a little girl who had died, yet miraculously came back to life. The Bible is one book that contains 66 smaller books. It was written over a period of 1,500 years and authored by over 40 different people that range from shepherds to doctors, scholars, farmers, and kings. Completed 2,000 years ago, historians say it's one of the most reliable books on the planet. Over 10,000 manuscripts have survived the centuries. Compare that to only 235 known manuscripts of Shakespeare's First Folio. There have been over 5 billion copies printed worldwide, making it the most reproduced book in the world. The Bible is divided into two sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is well known for its early history of the world and insight into life, giving wisdom such as don't murder and love one another. Other sections are a bit racy, such as your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. The first 4 books in the New Testament tell the story of Jesus through the perspectives of 4 of his closest friends. The rest of the New Testament is stories and letters revealing what Jesus' closest followers did after his time on earth. God used average people to heal all kinds of diseases and drive out demons. Many of Jesus' followers were killed because they dared to preach his message. Jesus claimed to be the human manifestation of God's unfailing love for humanity and the secret for true inner peace. He gave hope to the hopeless, love to the unloved, and then gave his life to bring never-ending life to everyone who would believe in him. That's where you come in. Beware, reading this book will change you. As you read it, its message of hope will come alive in you. That's what it's designed to do. Why not give it a shot and see for yourself what it says? It just might surprise you.
Come on and shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
You've been watching Las Vegas Tonight with your host, Dale Davidson. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of our show. We so appreciate your loyalty to our program. To keep Las Vegas Tonight on the air, please go to our website, vegassaints.org, and click the Donate button. To send a check or money order, please make it out to Dale Wynn Davidson Ministries and mail it to 9030 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 255, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89117. To suggest a guest to appear on the show or any other suggestions or questions, write to Dale at dalewdavidson@yahoo.com or call him at 702-480-3989.